Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is a tutorial about how to do child's pose properly. So, first of all, there are two different versions really of child's pose, and we'll look at both of them. So, child's pose is a pose that looks a little bit like this. The toes together, the knees are wide, the forehead comes down, and the arms are usually either forward or back by our sides. However, there are a couple things that can get in the way of that feeling good. So, for one thing, you may notice that the tops of your ankles in this pose are really getting a stretch. So, if the tops of your feet are tight, this might not feel comfortable. So, one thing you might want to do for your child's pose is to take like a rolled up towel and you can slide it underneath your ankles. So, that gives a little bit of lift and space for the tops of the ankles. Another thing that may not feel comfortable in your body would be the flexion of the knees. So sometimes it doesn't feel great for everyone to be bending the knees quite this much. So if that's your case, what you might do is take a blanket, something like that, and slide it between your thighs and your shins in order to create a little space. And that can sometimes make the pose feel a little bit friendlier. So the purpose of child's pose is really to be a resting pose where we can let our body give over to gravity and really rest and be restorative. So if there's any of these props that would help you to do that, you may want to incorporate those into your practice. Now, as I mentioned, there are really two different kinds of child's pose. So one version of child's pose, I'll just show you from the front, would be with the legs together. And when I do this version of child's pose, the thighs being present here actually presses against the belly, which allows the back body to widen and spread open a little bit more. And because my belly can't expand when I breathe, now when I breathe, I actually get a little bit more breath into the back body. So maybe you want to just try this one with me. And if you need something underneath your ankles or something between your shins and your thighs, you can go ahead and add that in. And then go ahead and come forward. And notice, and if your forehead can't hit the floor, it's really nice to have a block or even an extra blanket so that your head can completely relax. So remember, in child's pose, we're trying to surrender and relax with gravity and let the body take a break. So with the knees together, just take a moment to relax here, and you can either have the arms by the side, or you might take the fingertips back towards the back of the mat so your shoulders can drop forward. And notice that the thighs and their position against your belly starts to invite a little bit more breath into the back body. And sometimes you can even feel the breath all the way down into the pelvic floor, and into the back of the pelvis, which can be really nice because it's hard to feel the breath there otherwise. One way you can increase that sensation of spreading the breath into the back of the body is if you take, not too thick, but like kind of a thin blanket, something like that, and put that in the front of your pelvis. And what that does is it gives a little bit more resistance to your belly. So if I come on forward, I'm going to put something underneath my forehead so I can relax my neck. And that can be a nice way to actually increase the expansion of the breath into the low back and the pelvis. Now, the second version of child pose, if you want to come on up, would be very, very similar, and it has the same intention to really let our body relax. But in this version, I take my knees a little wider. So I'm taking my knees wide enough so that my rib cage is supported by my thighs, but my belly now has space to drop down between my legs. So I come on forward, and again, I like to have something underneath my forehead just so that I can really let the muscles of my neck go. I bring my forehead down to a block. My knees are a little wider now. Again, the hands are, often back behind you, but they can be forward as well. And in this version, I can let my belly drop down towards the floor, so I have a little less breath sensation in the back of my body, but my belly can expand really nicely, and this can be very relaxing, and it can feel a little less constricting than the first version. So when people talk about child's pose, this is the version that they usually mean. Now, if you don't have a block to put under your forehead for whatever reason, you can always use your hands. So you could make little fists with your hands, let your head relax, because it's really nice to let your neck go, right? Or stack your hands, that can work too. Or you could pile up a blanket again and put a blanket underneath your forehead, right? And so you might need to play a little bit with your props and what you have available so that you find the child's pose version that's really right for you. But remember, child's pose, however we do it, whichever version we're doing, whatever props we're using, the purpose of it is to really let our body rest and to let the weight of your arms, your shoulders, your pelvis, to really let all of that be supported by the floor. So don't be shy about playing with your blocks, your blankets, and your perhaps your small towels and other things at your disposal to make child's pose feel really restorative and restful. And I hope you enjoyed this.